In this video, we're going to be taking a look at volume and how to understand volume. Now, the essential question that we will try to answer throughout this video is how can you use unit cubes to find the volume of a rectangular prism? The first thing you will need to do in this video is you're going to need to cut out, fold, and then tape the net to form a rectangular prism. And you should have that net to form this rectangular prism with you. Okay, now the next thing you will need to do is use centimeter cubes to fill in the base of the rectangular prism without gaps or overlaps. So each centimeter, it's important to understand, has a cube. Each centimeter cube has a length, width, and height of 1 centimeter and a volume of 1 cubic centimeter. Okay, so we need to figure out how many centimeter cubes make up the length of the first layer, the width, and the height. Okay, so we can see, and you can see within your shape that you've created, the length, there are 5 centimeter cubes that make up the length, 5 centimeter cubes that make up the width, and then finally 1 centimeter cube that would make up the height. Okay, now based upon this, you can look at your rectangular prism that you've created and you can see how many center cubes are used to fill the base. Okay, you can see 25 centimeter cubes are used to fill the base. Okay, now the rectangular prism is made up of 8 unit cubes and has a volume of 8 cubic units as well. Okay, so you can take a look at that as you are looking at your rectangular prism that you have created. Now, after you are finished filling in your rectangular prism, these are some questions that you're going to want to answer. Okay, so the first one, let's take a look at this. How many centimeter cubes are in each layer? And you can see within your rectangular prism that there are 25 cubes within each layer. Okay, now how many layers of cubes fill the rectangular prism? You can see that 5 are used to fill in the rectangular prism. Okay, it's 5 layers are used. Okay, so how many centimeter cubes fill the prism completely? Okay, we could see that there are 125 cubes total. Okay, so since there are 125 cubes total within the prism, we could see that the volume, okay, of the rectangular prism is 125 cubic centimeters. Okay, because there's 125 centimeter cubes to fill it, so therefore the volume is 125 cubic centimeters. Okay, let's take a look at the making connections section. It's asking us which has greater volume. Now, it is important to remember that volume is just a measure of the amount of space a solid figure occupies. Okay, and it's always going to be measured in cubic units. Okay, so we could see, first of all, which one has a greater volume, 1 cubic centimeter or 1 cubic inch. Okay, now we can see, now visually you can easily see that the 1 cubic inch would have a greater volume. However, if you cannot see the shapes, we know right away that an inch is greater than a centimeter. Okay, so therefore anything with 1 cubic inch compared to 1 cubic centimeter would always have the greater volume. Okay, so we're taking a look at this next question. It says find the volume of the prism if each cube represents 1 cubic centimeter, 1 cubic inch, and 1 cubic foot. Okay, now if it were to represent 1 cubic centimeter, okay, we see that there are 3 units here, 6 units, and 2 units. So what you can even do is multiply the length times the width times the height in order to get volume. Okay, so we could take 3 times 6 times 2. That's going to give me 36. Okay, so no matter if it were measured cubic centimeters, it would be 36 cubic centimeters. Cubic inches, still 36. If these were to all represent cubic inches, and still 36 cubic feet if these were still all to represent 1 cubic foot. Now, the question underneath this, would the prism above be the same size if it were built with cubic centimeter cubes, inch cubes, or foot cubes? Okay, now the answer to this would be no. Okay, and the reason for this, the prism would have the same number of cubes, okay, and be the same shape. However, we know that centimeters, inches, and feet are all different lengths and all different sizes. So therefore, if this shape was built with cubic centimeters, it would be smaller than if the shape was built with cubic feet. Okay, so pretty obvious there. If it were all built with the same type of measurement and you compare them, then it would not match up to be the exact same. Okay, so the answer to that question would be no. Okay, we are going to take a look at this next shape here, and we're going to do this problem together, and it's asking us just to find the volume. Now remember, the volume is the amount of space a solid figure occupies, and it's always going to be measured in cubic units. Okay, cubic units. And the reason why it's cubic units, you can see that each space is represented with cubes. Okay, so we have volume. First of all, we can see that the length, width, and height, 4 centimeters, 4 centimeters, and 3 centimeters. So what we can do, we can just simply multiply 4 times 4 times 3. Okay, and we know that 4 times 4 times 3 is going to give us 48. Okay, so therefore the volume would be 48 cubic centimeters. Okay, so let's take a look at this next one, measured in cubic inches. So we have 3 inches, 2 inches, and 4 inches, so we can multiply the length times the width times the height. Okay, so we know 3 times 2 will give us 6, times 4 is going to give us 24. Okay, now we need to identify the appropriate measurement. So we have 24 cubic inches. It is important that you label it cubic inches, not square inches or anything like that, because volume is always labeled with cubic units. Now what I want you to do is pause the video, work the problem out all by yourself, and I'll have the answer for you when you press play. So pause the video now. Okay, so here's the answer for you. We have 36 cubic feet. Multiply the length times the width times the height. 6 times 2 times 3 is going to give us 36 cubic feet. Now what we're going to do with this first one together, we're going to compare the volumes of the different shapes, okay, by greater than, less than, or equal to. So the first thing we will need to do for this top one is find the volume. So we have 4 centimeters, 4 centimeters, and 2 centimeters. So we multiply 4 times 4 times 2. That's going to give us 32. Okay, 32 cubic centimeters. Okay, and then we have 4 cubic inches over here. So we have 4 times 4 times 2. Okay, now even though the number is equal, okay, you do need to look at the measurements. Okay, now we all know that inches are greater than centimeters. Okay, so even though we have 32 and 32, it's important to look at the actual measurement. So we have 32 cubic centimeters. We know that is less than 32 cubic inches. Now what I want you to do is press pause and work out this problem underneath the one that we just did all by yourself. When you press play, I will have the answer for you. So pause the video now. Okay, this one was a little easier. Whenever you're comparing volume with the exact measurements, we had cubic feet over here, cubic feet over here. The only thing you need to do is look at the number that you come up with, okay, that you find for the volume. So we have 108 cubic feet, obviously is greater than 80 cubic feet. Okay, so we're going to do this problem-solving problem together. It says a packing company makes boxes with edges measuring 3 feet. What is the volume of the boxes? Now it is important that if we have our box here, we can kind of think of it this way. Okay, so we have our box. All right, and we can even try to make this a little 3D here. Okay, so we can see that each part of this box measures 3 inches. Okay, so each edge would measure 3 inches. So the length, the width, and the height would all, I'm sorry, not 3 inches, 3 feet. Okay, length, width, and height would all be 3 feet here. Okay, so if that were the case, what we can do is just multiply the length, width, and height. So we'd have 3 times 3 times 3, that's going to give us 27 feet, okay, for the actual measurement, okay, but putting this into terms of volume, okay, so this would be 27 cubic feet. Okay, so the answer to the first one, what is the volume of the boxes? Okay, so one box would be 27 cubic feet. Okay, however, if there were 10 boxes put in a larger rectangular shipping container and completely filled with no gaps or overlaps, what is the volume of the shipping container? Okay, since we know that one box is 27 cubic feet, what we could do is we could take that measurement of 27 cubic feet, we can multiply it by 10, and the reason why we're multiplying it by 10 is because we have 10 boxes. Okay, so the answer to the final question would be 270 cubic feet for our answer. Okay, so we have our essential question: how can you use unit cubes to find the volume of a rectangular prism? Okay, so we can answer this question by saying I can find the number of unit cubes that it takes to fill the base of the rectangular prism without any gaps or overlaps, and then multiply that number by the number of layers that can make up its height. Then I can write the volume in cubic units. Okay, so this concludes our video to understanding volume. We are going to continue looking at volume a little bit more in depth as we move through. If you have any questions about volume, please come and see me.